Okay, so we are here with Niamh from Orbitas. First, I want you to introduce yourself and the Orbitas so we can start with a few questions.
Yeah, so Niamh McCarthy, I'm the director of Orbitas. I manage our climate-related risk work effectively, and we're an economic, financial, and spatial hub for analysis around climate risks and opportunities available to the agricultural sectors. So right now we're focusing on Brazilian soy and cattle, and we're really excited to have shared some insights around our analysis, and we're going to go public with our reports in early March as well.
Yeah, sounds great. I have a few questions that I wanted to explain to us. What are climate transitions and how do they impact Brazil's agriculture sector?
Yeah, so climate transitions are often less understood than, say, for example, the physical risks from climate change. So the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and others have done a really good job of framing how physical risks impact the agricultural sectors. We've seen the impact of physical risk already in Brazil from the perspective of loss of production and financial losses from stress events that have happened from, physical climate risks. Transition risks are less understood. They're the government, consumer, and private sector responses to climate change. So as we see physical risks intensify from climate change, we also see the responses to physical risks from climate change intensify. So that means that governments are accelerating and passing policies around climate change, whether that's in Brazil or that's abroad. Even the EU deforestation rule has been mentioned a number of times in this conference today, and that does restrict market access for those that can't prove transparency in their supply chains. We have market risks, which also restrict market access as corporates or financiers have increasingly strengthened policies around deforestation, around different sustainability policies. We have risks to reputation. If a company or a producer is linked to unsustainable practices, their reputation can be impacted, which impacts their access to resourcing, to financing, and we also have technology risks. So as the technology evolves and producers are able to produce more yield, that increases the competition for existing land, and it makes it more difficult for those without those technology advancements to produce. So we're raising awareness about these risks, but with each of these risks has a counter opportunity. So for example, market access to the European Union with the EU deforestation rule. If you can prove transparently that you have sustainable production, that's a huge market that's accessible to producers who are able to do that. And the same is true for each of the transition risks that we cover. So we really want to frame this from the perspective of these are huge opportunities that we want to highlight in advance, so that the agriculture sector really has the opportunity to evolve practices and to lean into these and avoid the financial losses that we're expecting from climate change.
Yeah. And how can Brazilian investors and producers and shareholders, what can they do to manage climate transitions? What are their part in all of it?
It depends on the type of group you're talking about. So for some groups, it's a measure of proving the transparency and proving the sustainability of practices. For others, it's a measure of changing the practices and upgrading to more sustainable management, to more sustainable intensification that doesn't rely on expanding onto new land. Instead, it would rely on increasing productivity on existing land. So under a lot of our transition scenarios, we're seeing that the price of land would increase based on competition from many of the other opportunities that we've talked about today, whether that's biofuels, whether that's carbon markets, biodiversity credits, and all of these criteria basically mean that the competition for land increases, and those producers who are able to produce more on existing land will be able to kind of withstand more of those stress events as the price of land grows.
What specifically is Orbitas' role in Brazil's cattle and soy sectors?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes down to how we assess risk. A lot of risk assessments are looking at historical data, and unfortunately with climate change, historical data isn't all that helpful in helping us to predict the future. When we say we're doing scenario analysis, we're not saying that we have the answer on exactly what is going to happen from a transition perspective. We're providing a series of hypothetical projections so that you can see under 1.5 degree of warming world, under a 3 degree of warming world, what would the risks, what risks would arise under those conditions, and how can I prepare from that? And on the flip side, what opportunities would arise? We're also looking at stress testing, so financial stress testing. Basically, you're looking at these events that could happen, and we're looking at how the profitability of representative farms, whether it's soy farms or cattle farms in different regions of Brazil, would be impacted by these stress events. And we're actually going to release an interactive tool where you can kind of change the severity of the stress event, and you'll be able to see how the map changes in terms of the risks and opportunities. So we're really trying to, rather than prescriptively say this is exactly what's going to happen, we're giving the information to allow producers, supply chain companies, investors to see what range of risks they could expect, what range of opportunities they could expect, and better prepare their practices in order to kind of lean into climate transition opportunities and mitigate against climate transition risks. Because there's a lot of people who work in these sectors, and in order to maintain profitability over the long run, it's important to really accurately and comprehensively assess your risk.